Hello everyone, I'm Rania Khalek and this is Dispatches. The Russian invasion of Ukraine caught Russians and Ukrainians by surprise, in a move that had been dismissed by most of them, as well as by most experts. Ukrainian propaganda has been very effective, while the Russians have not only struggled in their media war, they've had trouble even getting their narrative out, given the control the West has over social media, the internet, and the airwaves. Meanwhile, the left, both within Russia and internationally, is fractured. Despite disagreements, we can all agree that we oppose Western provocations and escalations. Here at Breakthrough News, we've emphasized the US and NATO role in provoking this crisis, which is precisely what the Western media has tried to obscure in the rush to war. And we've had on many voices from different segments of the left. One of those voices joining me from the Russian left is Alexey Sakhnin, an activist, a former political refugee, a journalist, and a historian of modern Russian history and society, with a PhD focused on debates about the Soviets within the Bolshevik Party. Alexey, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
So I wish we were here to talk about something a little less bleak than what's going on right now, but I guess let's just jump right into it. So aside from the internal goals, what are the goals in Ukraine? Do you think Russia can occupy Ukraine or establish a friendly government in Ukraine? Is that what one of the goals of the people who decided to do this is?
You know, I was one of those millions of watchers and experts and so on, who did not believe that they would attack at the end, at the last hours. Because it's just common sense. One of the reasons is not even bloody crimes and victims of that aggressive war. Rational reason for our regime is that they have no any administrative opportunities to manage Ukraine. They do not have thousands of loyal bureaucrats.
Right.
They do not have enough army to occupy Ukraine. They probably believed they are victims of their own propaganda. Their propaganda for 8 years described picture that Ukraine is just a failed state.
Mm-hmm.
They believed that Ukraine would collapse after first day of attack. But West for 8 years armed Ukrainian army, and before 24th of February, Ukraine was kind of failed state, and society was split and demoralized. But that attack mobilized society, united, and even that half of population, or third part of population, which sympathized Russia just a week ago, now is going as a volunteers to the people's militia, armed militia, and resist against Russian tanks. So with that bloody attack, Putin made the border between Russian and Ukrainian peoples, the huge hole full of blood. So and it's already done.
Yeah.
And because of Putin do not trust in any subject except secret services and armies and big money. He didn't thought about public reaction in Ukraine, and he didn't thought, and his nearest circle didn't thought about people's reaction in Russia. The civil part of oligarchy, the civil part of dictatorship, of regime, did not believe as well. They didn't knew that Russia will start a big war. Because that's why civil part and propaganda apparatus as a part of that part did not prepare any propagandistic narrative. There is no any mobilization, even between the loyal part of society. There is no any suggestion to Ukrainian people. There is no any suggestion for Russians, except that 1 hour strange historical lecture, extreme conservative and ultra-right lecture, There is no any explanation why Russian military flights and tanks should destroy biggest cities in Europe. There is no any description, no any mobilization in society. That war is totally not popular war. Just because of they didn't think about people.
They
People
just
does not
thought,
exist in those worldview.
the militias and anti-Russian forces are often described in Ukraine are often described as neo-Nazis. Was this true before the invasion? Is it true now? Can you explain to our audience the neo-Nazi elements in Ukraine and
That
how much power they have?
that was part of true before 24th of February. It was quite big part of true. So to 2014, Ukrainian oligarchy and government mobilized extreme right marginals and transformed them to weapon force, quite strong one. There was impossible to put in prison person who killed just another person on the street just because of he was part of that far right militia.
Wow.
So they was quite influenced force in Ukrainian society. But how much are they? It's few thousand of militarized soldiers. It's enough to scare weak Ukrainian power, to force it, to take in account that patriotic size, that patriotic party. But it's long, far away from Ukrainian society. And now voluntary mobilization to people's militia, the militia of defense, is thousands of people. And Russian invasion is argument of very nationalistic and patriotic and nationalistic mobilization, which delete the distance between patriotism and nationalism. Putin presented indulgencia, He deleted all thieves of Ukrainian nationalists, of American imperialists, who could not dream that Russia would jump in that, what hunters use against animals. When Putin spoke about geopolitical threats to Russia, he was Hitlerist. It was Hitlerist lie, because now all the real threats became much bigger. So American rockets, American ballistic rockets, were staying in Czechia and Poland. Now they would be everywhere around Russian borders. Now it's believable that Ukraine would be part of NATO after Russia would lose the war. So Putin make all real threats, geopolitical threats, much bigger and dangerous. Putin destroyed positions of all peacemakers in the West, in all the world. All people like me, all those leftists, peacemakers, pacifists, even centrists, even, in Sweden, for example, there are neutral conservative who are against NATO. Now they are all defeated. They're all defeated. Now we have proof that Putin is crazy, bloody aggressor, and he is. So the geopolitical reasons could not be taken in account when we are speaking about reasons of Russian dictatorship. And now we have full dictatorship. We have real military censorship. Almost all oppositional papers and TV channels are closed officially. Facebook almost doesn't work without special soft. And the authorities threaten us that everyone who would spread fake news about Ukraine would get 20 years of prison as a national traitors. And fake is everything what is not part of official presentations of Russian military of defense. You know, the most important argument of governmental propaganda is, okay, peacemakers, why you was silent for 8 years when it was blood in Donbass? And me, I never was silent. I was speaking about that. I lose career in Sweden. I was accused that I am Putin's spy in Sweden. I was not silent. And there are thousands of us and left people here was not silent.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Everything you're saying is, I can't argue with it. And I think it's hard for a lot of Western leftists to hear because so often, like you just said, I mean, you were accused in the West of being a Putin agent or a Putin spy because of your opinions on what the West was supporting in Donbass. And then now, I get, I can't imagine the position you're in because it's like you have to play this balancing act where you don't want to play
I'm
into
just
the
waiting
Western.
for arrest. I am waiting for
Well,
arrest.
right. I understand. No, and it's terrible the situation you're caught in because at the same time, there's all this anti-Russian sentiment in the West. It's being directed actually at you. Like you're suffering the consequences of this with the sanctions that are coming down on Russia. So in the West, we don't want to play into those narratives that are pushing this anti-Russia hostility and hysteria. But at the same time, I think we do need to be honest about this massive miscalculation.
Now they're killing thousands of people. And they're starting to create so fucking dictatorship here as living generations never saw. That is tragically, and what is going on with the left is just total repeat of 1914. There are left parties in Europe. They now vote for more sanctions and war to the last of Ukrainian. In Russia, unfortunately, after 17 years, I left the left front because the left front, unfortunately, together with the Communist Party, supported that bloody war with rhetoric, shit. But any case, they supported. Just minority, 20% minority.
On what's their reasoning? What's their reasoning for supporting it? Why?
Because, how they explain, you mean?
Yeah.
Because we are against fascists and the Ukrainian government are fascists or near to fascists, and we supported the will of Donbass people and all that blah blah blah. Because the central fact is Russian military plans and Russian tanks and Russian artillery now destroying the biggest cities of Europe, Kharkov and Kiev, and also Kherson, and also Melitopol, and everywhere else. It's not a civil war anymore in Ukraine. Now it's invasion, which have no any excuses, no moral, no political, no class reasons. I mean, of course, class reasons from point of view of Russian oligarchy will to keep power and property. So Putin unite Ukraine on the worst possible ideology and agenda. Now Ukrainian patriotism, even in my eyes, looks much better. They appeal to Stalingrad. They appeal to experience of the Great Patriotic War, not to Ukrainian nationalists who fight on German side, but to Soviet experience now. Putin and war is the same now. But Ukrainians and Europeans and Americans should understand that it's the same all over the world. We should not repeat the tragedy of 1914 in full. We should not support our governments. We should not support, and as I said, in Russia, that war is not popular. Is not popular. Nobody won the war. On the first day of war, I went to the street. Sociology does not exist under the war. But I just walk along the street and ask 40 people, what do you think? And there was just one who said some patriotic words, and then, but rubble would be nothing, but life would be terrible, our government made many mistakes, and all other 39 or something, they said it's just catastrophe, terrible catastrophe. Problem that people could not put that stuff, that what had happened, in those moral coordinates, and to call those own country aggressor, it's very difficult. Where our main national heritage is that we stop the bloodiest and most terrible war in the history. Now we became the place of aggressor. It's impossible to put in your head. If Russian army would win now, then Ukraine would be Russian Afghanistan second time. It would be social disaster, which would stimulate all most radical nationalistic forms of resistance. Western imperialists would use it as a, how do you call it, hunter's stuff, to keep Russia
Bleed.
weak,
They say to bleed Russia. That's what they say. To bleed
to
Russia.
bleed Russia.
That's what they say. Yeah.
And just usual people from our two unlucky nations would pay by blood, by poverty, unemployment, inflation, short life, unhappy life, for that fucking imperialistic games. That war in general is impossible to win. But it could be years, it could take years, if people of the world will not create the democratic, anti-imperialistic, peaceful movement, anti-war movement.
I'm curious how people are reacting to the impact of these sanctions, because these sanctions are quite severe. And I have Russian friends who have told me, they're worried this is going to be worse than the 90s. So what's the mood about the economic impact of what is happening to Russia right now?
It's already quite huge. During a week, ruble lose 50% of its value. We're always fighting with Turkey lira for the role of the worst valuta, worst currency in the world. Now we won. Ruble cost double less than it costed just 1 week ago. Prices in shops growing up extreme fast. Russia is very involved in transnational trade and transnational economy. There is nothing, almost nothing, what is 100% Russian. Even for military plans, they used details made in other countries. So these sanctions would affect Russia very hard. And people are in panic, more or less, as your friend said. It's objectively that it's new 90s coming. And it's a bit funny because the main
I know what
social
you're going to
contract
say.
and main promise of that regime was 90s, never again. We guarantee you two things: stability and no war. No war and stability. And now we have both, much more than we can eat.
That's really terrible. And there's nothing. It sounds to
But
me
there is a
like,
hope. There is a hope.
that's where I wanted to go.
It's a
What
chance
feels
as well.
so you think there's a chance for progressive forces?
It's a chance for people's movement. And people's movement, if it appears against scaring, against fear, against propaganda, against dictatorship, if it appears, would create all progressive movements and then projects. But we need solidarity. We need to show it's not war of all world against you Russians.
Do you fear that this could escalate outside of Ukraine and Russia? Like this could escalate. You've got NATO talking about. You've got Western leaders talking about funding an insurgency in Ukraine that would likely be trained and armed in nearby countries like Poland, which does risk escalation between a NATO country and Russia. That's a real possibility here. I hope it doesn't happen, but if there are voices in the West that are pushing for this, do you foresee the possibility of some sort of broader European war as a result of this?
Everything is possible now. Yes. Many speculation about this. We will see. The nuclear bomb is a big factor, and there probably only one distance between 1914 and 2022 is a nuclear bomb. So we will see, but I believe we will see very soon Caribbean crisis number 2, at least. I hope it would not finish with the end of the game for all of us.
Okay. On that note, Alexey, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you very much.